That's interesting. Okay. Well, as long as it's all coming through okay on your end, I guess. It's that damn clacks signal, you know. Somebody in Borogravia must be messing with the clacks.
Oh.
That's what's happening.
We can,
Anyway,
if it's a problem, we can stop for a rest before we take the towers.
indeed, indeed. All right, do you want to kick us off?
Yes, welcome. This is I've never read Discworld. I am Andrew Luke, private. I have never read Discworld.
I think by now you've been promoted to at least sergeant, if not, well, Lance Corporal at the very least. Lance Corporal Andy Luke reporting for duty. Also with, I'm going to promote myself to sergeant. Then, if you're not going to take the full responsibility for the squad, this is Sergeant PJ Hart reporting for duty. Also, only my second read of this, yeah, of this particular Discworld book, but an interesting one. Very keen to dive into the discussion. But first of all, Andy's going to give us some pertinent details about this month's book.
Yes. If you're listening to this on one of the many podcast platforms, you can also have the option of the video version on Spotify and YouTube. Today we are, Monstrous Regiment. I've got this absolutely adorable copy, lovely hardback with a little bookmark inside. PJ is now modeling his hardback.
Yeah, so two things about my hardback. I bought this when it came out on the day of its release for the princely sum of, I think, 15 or 16 pounds in whatever 2003 money, whatever that was. However, I've lost my dust jacket and mine didn't come with a bookmark. So I'm not salty about that at all.
Look at this madness. £2.50 says
£2
on the back for that glorious. It really does make a huge difference, the quality of where you're reading it from. I've forever, all through this, I've wanted a bookmark, and this handy little tag has just been the thing. It's been nice and finesse, except for my gerbils decided to start chewing it towards the end, and I just let them.
Well, I thought you were going to say you had been chewing it, so at least it wasn't. At least you've got the gerbils to blame.
So this is 2003, I believe.
No, sorry, I was wrong. I did say that, but it's actually 2002.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But yeah, so I'm pretty sure I bought this upon its release in 2002, with which I guess with money I would have earned working on a juice bar, my first ever job back in those heady days. I worked on a juice bar and I worked at a nightclub. Two jobs at the time, and still managed to find time to read the current Discworld. This is the first time I really remember like catching up with Discworld and like, oh yeah, I don't know, I guess maybe Nightwatch. But yeah, it was around this time where I sort of caught up and I was like super excited about the new releases, and obviously Nightwatch had blown me away, and I was keen to get into this as well. But I think Andy's more fresh first impressions we'll maybe hear those first.
Yeah, it was long. It's like the second or third longest Discworld book. It was very slow boil, which I really, really liked for the first 120, 30 pages. I appreciated that, although we get some Sam vibes scattered throughout, that he's very much a very minor role in this book. It had me thinking a lot of Small Gods, which is also quite a slow boil. Nothing really. And it's a bit of an outlier in that way as well. Yeah, the slow boil thing did start to really get to me after a while. And particularly this podcast's a bit delayed because I've had loads of other things on. So I'm to blame for that. So I was reading this while doing other stuff, and then a sort of a last dash in the last 150 pages where stuff really does start to heat up.
I would just like to correct the record. This is not my copy of Monstrous Regiment. This is my copy of Night Watch. So
Oh,
the date was
okay.
wrong. Yeah. So 2003, I think you're right about that.
2003. First reprint, 2004. My copy says on the back, like Jonathan Swift, Pratchett uses his other world to build up a distorting mirror to our own. And like Swift, he is a satirist of enormous talent, incredibly funny, compulsively readable. It's not the funniest Discworld, but it's funny in all the right places. The narrative, there's a lot of there's a lot of the easiest phrase that comes to mind is jumping the shark as much as you can in a Discworld contortions. And it's very much the things that are so stretch and believability are very much there all the way through to make points there for messages. So many contrivances are used to it's Terry signaling.
Yeah.
I guess I really like that.
Yeah, it's something I've been touching on, or that I've been noticing a lot more. I think on my rereads is that thing. I mentioned it all the time on the podcast about how he sort of takes a concept, a familiar concept, and takes it to its logical extreme, and quite often pushes it beyond its logical extreme for comedic effect. And this is a really clear example of that. Just the whole conceit of this book is a really kind of clear example of that. And that is something that I don't think I fully appreciated or really appreciated at all. The first time I read this, I think at the time, like, this was kind of a disappointment for me, probably. Like, I rushed to buy it, like, hot off the press as soon as it released, paid full price for a brand new hardcover copy of it. Yeah, pretty much off the back of Night Watch, which had been one of my favorites. And then just like not really vibing with this in the same way, just because the range of kind of themes and tone and content in this world is so vast that like there's no point going from one book to the next expecting the same thing. And but that's what I wanted after Night Watch. Reading Night Watch as a teenage boy with a bit of an interest in left wing politics. That was everything to me. And then this felt like quite a departure from that. And I was at the time kind of disappointed, and I just didn't really get it. A lot of the kind of references and the fact that it felt a bit more grown up, maybe in some ways as well. We're entering into a period of Discworld where the distance between like the technology and the society and the politics of the disc, the distance between that and the society and politics and technology of the real world has become much shorter.
Yeah.
And I think the series starts to feel a bit more grown up as a result. And I wonder, now that Terry has at this point in the series, he's got his young adult spin off with Tiffany, and he's like, that's where we're gonna go with that stuff, with the more supernatural, the more kind of maybe old school Discworld, for want of a better phrase. And then in this kind of the mainstream strand, the main strand of Discworld, he's maybe then feels freer to explore, I guess, what feel like more adult topics. So yeah, it threw me for a bit of a loop at the time. And then when I first got on Reddit 15, 16 years ago, whatever, and joined the Discworld subreddit and saw a lot of people on there sort of holding this up as one of their favorites. And to this day, I just did a quick search just before we came on, and there's plenty of threads even within the last year, people talking about what they love about it, and throwing up fan art of the squad and all that kind of stuff, and talking about it from kind of quite informed sort of socio-political perspectives as well. So it's a fantastic book to discuss. I enjoyed it a lot more on the second read. Enjoyed it. I appreciated a lot more about it. Stuff that just went clean over my head as a teenage boy. Like yeah, I'm really, really glad. Like, this is one of the ones I knew I was going to be interested to revisit, and I'm super, super glad we're doing it now.
It's really a book I think that does reward maturity. It's very political. It exposes JK Rowling as an absolute grifter. There's such a rich cast of characters, and many of them evolve throughout the book in ways that you wouldn't expect. I mean, I'm sure you had a guessing game of oh, this character's going to turn out to be female, and as we know now, we were proved right. Uh, they surprise you as well. These characters that you write off fairly early on. Uh, yeah, as the book progresses, yeah, they're like even Jack Grum's boss. I'm forgetting his name right now.
Oh, Frock.
Flo- uh, no, Blouse.
Oh, yeah. Oh, sorry. Yes.
Blouse has some really surprising moments later on. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think there's a high concept. I mean, all Discworld books are obviously high concept, but there's a high concept here that I just did not get at the time. And I feel like I hopefully do get it now. Some elements of it, I don't want to give the whole game away. Like, we'll get into it because there's some bits of it. I was sort of, I remember being like, giving it the benefit of the doubt until about 2/3 of the way through, maybe. And then, yeah, mostly being quite thoroughly dissatisfied with the ending, I think was probably my biggest gripe at the time. So I don't want to leap into that discussion just now because we've got the whole book to discuss,
We'll
obviously.
get there.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So big news for regular listeners is that after, I guess, what must be now years of cajoling, Andy has finally uh, convinced me to write the synopses for this book. It picked a
It's
tricky
gone
one.
well.
Yeah, well, I mean, this one has got a lot of characters. They all have multiple different aliases. There's new regions, there's new countries. So yeah, do bear with me. I feel it would be unfair of me to make Andy read the first one, so I'll jump in with part one, shall I? Somewhere in war-torn Borogravia, Polly becomes Ozzer and decides to join the army to rescue her brother Paul. God Nuggin has declared the clacks and garlic, cats, the smell of beets, people with ginger hair, shirts with 6 buttons, and anyone shorter than 3 feet, an abomination. And so Borogravia is not just at war with her usual adversary, neighbouring Zoblenia, but with Ankh Morpork too. Polly is recruited into a squad led by the gruff but kind, long-serving Sergeant Jackram and the repulsive political officer Corporal Strappy. Her fellow recruits include humans Tonker Halter, Shufty Manacle, Wazir Goom, and Lofty Toot, also a vampire named Maledict, a troll named Carborundum, and an Igor named Igor. The squad sets off for their mustering point, but not before a mystery benefactor gives Polly some socks to help her pass more convincingly as Ozzer. So, a lot of table dressing required, new setting, lots of new characters.
Yeah. A really good setup for most of the characters. I got a bit confused over Tozzer, Wazzer, Shifty, the feelers, but you get like fully formed Carborundum, Maledict, who my coffee addiction is probably my one of my favorites. We get a really good scope into Polly, and we'll see her evolve through, but a really likable character.
Yeah, for sure. I would agree. Definitely an issue I had on the first read through was, yeah, just keeping track of all the characters and their various pseudonyms and stuff like that. Definitely a lot easier the second time around, having a bit of a foreknowledge of where they're going to end up. Because I feel like the way I end up identifying the characters is mostly through their backgrounds. We don't learn a lot about that at this stage because they're all trying to keep that secret. But once you realize, the two girls who've been in the workhouse, or the three girls, I guess, who've been in the workhouse, Wazer's got her Joan of Arc thing going on, and then I've already forgotten. Actually, I said I knew. Is it Lofty and Tonker are the other two who were in the workhouse where they're. And as you say, once you've got the other species in the mix, they're quite easy to keep track of. So yeah, but at this stage, it's kind of a lot. You're focused on Polly, and at least but Polly is quite a good POV character in that sense. So it's kind of okay, like it's all right if the rest of them aren't really coming fully formed yet. As you said, Polly's a good character to sort of lead us into this, and we really feel for her motivations. I think it's heavily implied that her brother is sort of neurodivergent in some shape or form, and is basically not the kind of person who should be in the army.
I hadn't picked up on that, but yeah, I see it now.
So yeah, I don't think it's necessary. I don't think it's necessarily made explicit in this section, but like certainly by the end, when all the talk of him, like fascination with birds and his painting and all that, I think I don't know. I wouldn't have felt comfortable putting it out there, except that it seems to be a bit of a consensus. So I don't want to take credit for making that observation. Certainly, it's not my observation, but like you say, once it's kind of pointed out, you go, "Oh yeah, I get it."
And Polly is the lens that we see the other characters through. And right off the bat, Strappy is a real bastard. Um, a real sort of job's worth, a real overreacher. And just because Jackram is in that kind of relationship vicinity, we kind of assume, well, I assume Jackram is pretty much not that far removed, not as cruel, maybe, which is a really good bluff, really good sleight of hand for what comes later.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Strappy is an interesting one because I do sort of feel like we talk about it every now and again, the sort of the pantsing versus planning approaches to narrative, which I think you get away with a lot more when you prose versus writing for the screen. But I do sort of feel that like, Strappy literally like dips in and out of this book, and there's like not always a really clear sense of like who the main antagonist in this book is supposed to be.
Well, the answer is war and state and military. So this got me thinking right off the bat a lot about that. And we both grew up in a war zone with a military presence on our streets, and we've probably, without getting into personal details, we've probably both had interactions with it. I can share one with you.
Oh yeah,
One
okay.
of my memories as a teenager, our parents used to drag us all over Europe camping. So it might have been in Europe, but it might have been in England. And one of the campsites we were on had a military encampment. I don't know if maybe they were probably there for leisure. My brother befriended all these soldiers who had this huge set of tents. There must have been about 40 of them. And he asked him if he could stay overnight with them. And I thought, well, I didn't really know them. I thought that'll be cool. My brother's doing it. I want to do it too. So I did that. 6 o'clock the next morning, whistles going off, howling, screaming. I'm not a good morning person. I like to sort of get me embryo form down a bit, and to just have that flicked switch with kind of like reanimate me, and that's very uncomfortable, and it's kind of what I associate with military life. What a lot of people I think probably do is that sort of follow orders, just do from from 0 to 60.
Indeed. Yeah. My family has quite a long sort of history of military service, which is equally complicated then by the kind of the recent conflict in Northern Ireland, because we're from the community that the army was ostensibly sent here to pacify. And my dad was really, really keen to follow his uncle into the RAF. And as a 17-year-old RAF cadet, as a 17-year-old Catholic RAF cadet, when the Troubles broke out, he basically was forced out by his peers due to sectarianism, and then had multiple unpleasant run-ins with the army over the intervening 20, 30 years as they, made their presence felt in our areas in Belfast. So, yeah, so my family history with the armed forces in particular is complicated. So I absolutely, and to be honest, I probably wasn't fully aware of that as the first time I read this as I am now. We wouldn't really speak about stuff like that as much when I was younger. A lot of those stories, especially like some of the spicier ones, like my dad didn't tell me till I was much older. And then like another one of my siblings went to serve in Afghanistan. After I read this the first time, so that whole thing is pretty complicated. But I absolutely agree that like the lack of a concrete human antagonist in the book does kind of leave that more open for that larger thematic force of antagonism of just warfare and just like what that means, the kind of general human nastiness that leads to warfare. I think it's a tricky proposition, and it's something that probably did turn me off it a little bit the first time around, but actually that's one of the main things that does make this book feel more mature, makes it feel more grown up. And the idea that somebody like Strappy, who represents that, can also then just turn tail and run, essentially, can disappear in the first act.
So Terry does introduce us to the characters, but their motives are largely left for later in the book. And that's really interesting because it allows us to sort of think about what's the point in what they're doing and to open out a plot serving message. And I mean, so you get the representation of military life, the discipline, and in the hands of other writers, this would be used, military would equal thriller, drama, all that. The slow boil lets it just become drudgery, especially the first half of the book, monotonous, boring. And that's a really interesting way to represent.
Yeah, it is. It's risky for sure. And it's a bit ahead of its time. I think some more mainstream media that came out, maybe within a decade or so after this, American TV shows and movies that looked at the Middle East conflicts, stuff like Jarhead or Generation Kill, I think would maybe shined a kind of a more mainstream light on that. But yeah, Terry's doing that at least 5 years. Well, Generation Kill, the book, maybe around the same time. But I mean,
Yeah.
in this kind of setting, in that kind of fantasy setting where he's free from the constraints of journalism or whatever, he can really make the point that he wants to make.
Yeah, Generation Kill I hadn't realized it was a book. I know it through the HBO adaptations by David Simon of The Wire.
Yeah.
I haven't seen it since it aired.
Yeah, same.
Yeah,
and I did just
worth watching.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, that kind of subversion, I guess, yeah, of the tropes of military fiction, and if you're thinking like there's obviously a lot of references here to kind of 19th century European conflicts. So if you're a boy / man of a certain age, you're thinking about Sharp, or you're thinking about Hornblower, things like that, those kind of swashbuckling adventures. And like you say, this is just the straight opposite of that. And it's quite jarring, but it's effective for sure.
They spend a lot of this part of the book around the recruiting office, which is the bar. And that's another sort of motif in terms of military narratives, is causing trouble in a bar.
Yeah, sure.
And in this case, that's a perfect dovetail with the many Pratchett stories where there's trouble in bars.
Yeah, and it's always something I'm watching out for is for the first pub scenes. But this book actually pretty much opens in a pub. Polly starts her story working in an inn, and then yeah, the mustering point is at a different inn, and then some stuff goes down.
And there's some great power plays from largely from Carborundum and Maledict, who kind of both make their presence felt fairly early on and don't really suffer Strappy to some extent. A lot of interesting interplay between Strappy and Jack Rum as to who's really calling the shots, and it does seem to be Strappy, whereas Jack Rum's just seems to be just content to let him do his thing, but it's held from us that Jack Rum's playing a longer game.
Yeah, and it is actually I kind of messed it up in the synopsis, but I think it's also held back from us that Strappy is a political officer at this point. He's just meant to be a corporal in the recruiting. He's meant to be Jackrum's recruiting assistant or whatever. So kind of let the cat out of the bag a little bit there, but I'm sure everybody listening along has obviously read the book, hopefully fairly recently. One final point maybe before moving on to what goes down at the mustering point is the return of Nuggin.
Nuggin, who we saw was a couple of books ago, was it?
In the last hero, yeah.
Yeah.
And it, yeah, again, the little germ of that idea of the god who actually like wants to make it challenging, for his believers. Like he's gonna forbid them from doing really good stuff. Like I think in the joke in the last hero is that he's forbidden chocolate, and the bard is extremely upset about that.
Yeah, Nuggin's a dick. There's our quote for this episode,
And
or one of them. Yeah, I seem to remember in the last hero a lot of the other gods giving Nuggin grief for being a dick.
Yeah, and that's all played super for laughs in that book. But here it's like it's kind of dark. It's actually very dark. And when I was doing my little Reddit search, I came across a thread from somebody just sort of pointing out, kind of another cultural connection for us maybe in Ireland, just like the kind of religious workhouses and all that kind of stuff, and just how kind of fatalistic and oppressive religion can be, especially if you're poor and especially if you're female. And the fact that that is just straight up copied as a plot point, character point, one to one into this ostensibly comedy fantasy book is extremely dark, but really eye opening. Like that's the scandals. Those kind of scandals were known or were starting to become known at that time, but like it hadn't blown up in the way it was now. So for Terry Pratchett, for an English fantasy writer, to be kind of alert to that and to include it in a book like this, I think it does say a lot. It's deeply, deeply uncomfortable reading at times.
Well, this is something that actually did occur to me because this was published within 5 years of the Good Friday Agreement.
Yeah.
England did suffer from the Troubles. So, I wondered, was there a bit of a Northern Irish analogy going on? And I think it's more that it's been taken, I suspect so, but also obviously from other sources because Bargravia is fighting everybody that they can.
I think it's fair, the religious aspect of the conflict. I think that is a fair comparison to a certain degree, especially that's how the conflict often would have been framed outside of Northern Ireland. It was a religious conflict between Catholics and Protestants, and there obviously is an element of truth in that. But I think that the deeper element, the kind of Magdalene laundry analogues and all that, the deeper societal problems caused by religion preying on the working classes, I think is more unsettling, but more interesting, I think, in many ways, to sort of see something like that put forward in a book like this. So, yeah, again, as always, ahead of his time, like every single book. Okay, that got quite grim. Do you want to lead us into the next bit where some swashbuckling does actually occur?
PJ Synopsis Part 2. Attention! Polly susses out that Lofty and Shufty are also girls, while at the muster point, the squad's Lieutenant Blouse issues Jackram his long-delayed demob papers, which he ignores. Strappy does a runner when he learns he's being sent to the front with the squad, but the front soon comes to them when Zalobian cavalry attack. The squad get the better of Captain Horrence and his men, which becomes front page news in Ankh-Morpork Times. The squad head off to join the army, while their story attracts the attention of Ankh-Morpork Special Envoy Sir Samuel Vimes.
So there you go. Yeah, so the skirmish at the inn, I mean, it makes me feel so stupid in retrospect, thinking about how like I felt the fact that everybody turns out to be a girl at every given moment in this book. That started to kind of annoy me the first time I read it, but it's so well set up. It's so clearly telegraphed right from the start. He's just an idiot not to pick up on it the first time around. Like the whole, Polly having to go undercover as a girl who's undercover as a boy for the first time when she pretends to be the barmaid again here. Like it's all that stuff's been really well set up. So yeah, this was really fun, and we get to see them kind of win. They get to see them win a battle against the enemy in their first engagement, which, like, I know you said that the first segment is quite a slow burn, so this is kind of a nice bit of release, isn't it?
Echoes of Blackadder there and Strappy getting sent to the front and Captain Darling's fate in the final episode of that.
For sure. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot. I think a direct comparison between this and Blackadder is fair, but I think it's more that it's not just that, it's that they're both kind of drawing from the same tradition of kind of British military stories about the British military, but also the kind of, I don't know, is pantomime the right word? Or like, that kind of like
yeah. There's a cross-dressing
exactly, yeah.
celebration going on.
So soldiers willing to dress up as women at the drop of a hat for very spurious, negligible reasons, I think is like, there's definitely a whole episode of at least one whole episode of Blackadder about that.
We get some interesting terminology. We get scubbo.
Oh God!
Which I think Iger at one point says it's hearty, but also livery and lungy. We get the Rupert, which I've used in another script this week, and the whole kind of shaving thing, which neither PJ or I have bothered to do tonight.
Not for quite some time. Yeah, the Rupert thing. I'm not sure if I first heard that here or if I heard it elsewhere. It feels like that one is very cemented in like just normal parlance, soldiering parlance for me.
I'm just looking through the pages, just how again the slow boil, the slowness with which Jackram and Polly grow their relationship. The Jackram Polly stuff is probably among my favorite scenes.
Yeah, it's a good dynamic.
And I couldn't really point to one except maybe the final one, but that's a great relationship just at the heart of this book.
Yeah, and sort of reading it off the back of Tiffany to an extent, the kind of the generational relationships in Discworld are always really quite interesting, and I think they become more interesting and more layered the older Rihanna probably gets, the relationship between Terry and Rihanna. I don't think it's wild speculation to suggest that deeply informs these, because you can kind of see them develop and mature as the series matures. And this really feels like it's getting there. It's a relationship between an older character and a younger character, but they're both adults. The older character is treating the younger character as an adult. So yeah, that kind of evolution of those relationships is really interesting, and and really rewarding to follow. Even though Jackram does call them his little lads, they're still ostensibly soldiers, all soldiers in a war at the end of the day.
There is a rising suspicion Jackram is, when reading it, cracked in the head because he's been retired, he's been put out to pasture, and he's finding cleverer and cleverer means to get back into his role, and that's kind of fun. And Blouse, I'll come to why Blouse is such an interesting character later, but he just seems like a sort of a less toxic version of Strappy initially, who's really going to lead them all into bloodshed. So watching the interplay between Jackram and Blouse and the politics of that is really, really cool. And
Yeah, for sure.
I'm really glad to see William DeWard back. I really like William DeWard. I've missed him.
Yeah. So again, in my sort of cursory Reddit search before we came on, there was discussion about which of the Discworld series this book falls under. And I think I kind of pitched it to you last time as the last of the standalone Discworld books. There is some feeling, which appears to be backed up by how the books are categorized on the official Discworld website, that this book is part of the Industrial Revolution strand, which is, I suppose, ostensibly starts with the truth. So in that sense, it feels quite natural-ish for William to turn up, for Vimes to turn up. I mean, I was so frustrated the first time I read this that Vimes turns up and he's only in it for like 20 pages. Having just read Night Watch and loved that so much, and I'm being desperate basically for more Vimes and for more City Watch, to just have him kind of futzing around in the background as a special envoy or whatever. That frustrated me no end at the time, but now sort of seeing the series as a whole, this all sort of falls into place, makes a bit more sense.
Well, getting into the tech a bit, I'm just leaping ahead a bit.
Sure.
Blouse is he's not a very likable character, but the guy is having stuff going on upstairs. He comes up with the genesis of the Discworld internet. He's talking about using clacks in super complicated ways that I don't know if it's the word or other officers have really thought about. There's so that's a really interesting scene, and we'll see this later when he comes up with the plan to attack the keep and the use of the Morse code and the lighting to betray different positions of where they might be. He's actually this is a desk jockey who's actually spent a lot of time thinking at his desk, although you don't really see it on the battlefield, but for a few brief moments, which are really quite beautiful and quite respectable.
Yeah, I think it's well set up because, like you said, when we first meet him, he seems super green. He doesn't really understand the situation on the ground, so we just assume this guy's gonna get all these kids, all these girls killed, basically. But yeah, it's nice because we go on a journey with him as well, and we find out he's a good person more or less underneath. So the fact that he's a good person and he also isn't completely useless, he actually does have something to contribute, is nice and ends up being quite satisfying for sure.
It's really interesting that I was going to say triangulation of powers. It's maybe not, but how Blouse is shuffled out of power position very subtly without him knowing by Polly. And I mean, Jackram, I suppose, is fairly head on when he's challenging Blouse. So that was going to be my triangle, but the first part really sets us up to see Maledict as a responsible parental authority figure of as in authority of consciousness,
Mm-hmm.
and that
Yeah.
slips away as his coffee problem manifest.
Yeah, I mean, I get it. It's so nice, and it's really compelling to have this group that consists of a vampire, an Igor, and a troll in the mix. But I don't think any of those three characters get they don't get an arc. They don't get a character arc in the same way that Polly does, or Blouse even does, or certainly Jackram. Uh, except for the kind of coffee thing, which is fun and I love. But the fact that they're not, well, we'll get there. The fact that they're not there at the end in the keep and stuff like that, it does make me wonder if there were maybe other plans for those characters that maybe just fell by the wayside. Because, like you said, this is a really, really long book
It did
already.
actually take William de Word explaining to me why the book is called Monstrous Regiment. uh, yeah, I mean, Igor meets an Igorina. Um, Igor's fairly, or Igorina is fairly active in the book in terms of the stitching up the enemy soldiers, patching together clothing. Uh,
Yeah, that's fair.
Besides meeting a partner at the end, which Carborundum also does, um, are both fairly sort of static.
Yeah,
We
and
divide these books into four bits, so I'd say there's a level of staticness between two and three for these characters.
yeah. I would agree. I do think the decision to make Maledict a lot more of a comedy relief character, because we're not expecting that. He's the physically strongest, and then because of the vampire thing, there's a threat there that he could flip, and then to tie that into the whole kind of Vietnam soldier going off on one, becoming unhinged and unstable like that. That's quite a fun connection to make. Um, but he does then sort of end up straying into more comedy relief territory. But yeah, very easy to relate to somebody with a caffeine addiction for sure. I think we can both relate to
Yeah,
that.
yeah. I could sooner give up cigarettes than I could caffeine. The front of my copy there, I don't. Yeah, you can see it. So the character in black with the black hair, I'm fairly sure is meant to be Maledict,
Yeah,
which is I exactly how I pictured them as a sort of suave, Fonzie in wartime kind of, or maybe not Fonzie in wartime, no. But just a very cool, casual, collected character,
yeah.
which, whether that's the intention or not, is a nice contrast with the dope fiend that we get later. Or the roast fiend.
Yeah, for sure. Um, Anything else from this section before we want to move on? Yeah, we need to talk about the Prince Heinrich situation. Or I don't think that's not explicitly revealed, or I've messed this up because I
No,
specifically ended the section before that is revealed to the squad.
it's an
Uh,
interesting subplot that does come back again and again later on and gives there's a yeah Chekhov's gun kind of thing with the prince getting kneed into meat and veg. It's a great power token that Polly and Jack Robin will use later to get themselves out of a number of scrapes and to big up themselves thanks to William de Word.
Yeah, I again at the time remember being a bit turned off by this whole thing, like the political maneuvering that's obviously going on, more or less. Not all of it's going on off the page, but obviously a lot of it is happening off screen slash off the page in terms of the public reaction to the photograph and the times and stuff. All that stuff just felt a bit kind of big and boring, and I wasn't as interested in the kind of the politics of the story, I guess. I just kind of wanted a cool Discworld war story, something maybe more in line with Jingo or whatever. But this stuff feels much more grounded, much more real, in terms of how public opinion can be manipulated, because like that around conflict, because obviously we're seeing that turned up way beyond our imaginings in the world today. So again, to see Terry a bit out ahead of the crowd on that. And also,
Yeah,
it is, for all my grumbling reading it the first time around, it is well integrated into the narrative. It's not just their first skirmish, it has like really big implications for the rest of the story and for the war as a whole. So,
for the disc. Yeah.
indeed, yeah, for the setting, not just for the story.
But oh, sorry. Uh, stop! You're ruining the book for me. So here's my problem.
Go.
William de Word. I think he's portrayed a little differently here than he is in the truth. Maybe a little kinder, little nicer. Not a great deal. He is seems to me a really nice character, really lovely bloke.
Yeah, that's
He's
interesting.
the one that's carrying the propaganda, the big military narrative, and blowing it up into this mythic story, which is a bit of a jarring point. I mean, actually, you're not spoiling it. Terry is spoiling it. And he does this throughout with contrivances because he's got a message to get over.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I guess, yeah, newspaper media people can be quite nice, even though they put out shit. Um,
Yeah, I guess. I mean, every country at war engages in propaganda. Like that's
Look at Zelensky.
right.
What an
Yeah,
ambassador.
for sure. Yeah. So I mean, you can definitely see how these kind of skills and this and the media can be used for good and for ill. And I guess which use is good and which is ill very much depends which side of the war that you happen to find yourself on, I suppose.
Yeah, if we take Zelensky and Trump as imagine them as newspaper men. Which one are you gonna buy?
Yeah, which one is well, yeah, which one is better at presenting their case, I suppose. One would like to think it's Zelensky.
This is all on theme on representation, as a word represents a squad. The squad represent themselves as as males, and it's really, yeah. I don't know where it's going up, but it's
Yeah, nothing is really as it seems in this book, and I think that speaks to a kind of a larger point. The stakes in war are so high. It's people's lives are literally at stake, hundreds of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands more, and uh, it's easy to say, it's easy to glibly say as a writer, oh, what's the point? But like you said, everybody here is engaging in some element of subterfuge, basically, even from the very top to the very bottom. Like the war is being waged for not any particular reason other than Nuggin said clacks were bad. Basically, that's it. Just for no reason other and that's nonsensical. This is a guy who says buttons are bad or people under 3 feet tall are bad. So this war is essentially being waged because a god had a brain fart. And then that is carried all the way down to foot soldiers lying about being boys or girls. So the whole thing is kind of rotten from the top to the bottom. I think that's what you're getting at. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, yeah. You just power boosted my tiny point into a great big tree.
Ah, lovely. Do you want to lead us into the next bit?
I think it's your turn.
Oh yeah, by all means, I'll lead myself into the next bit.
Nice media propaganda there, PJ.
Yeah. Yeah, the power of persuasion almost got you. Okay.
Manufacturing consent there.
Indeed. Was that Chomsky? Did he get cancelled? Yeah, I think he did. Part 3. After a skirmish with some skirmishers, the squad learned that Captain Horrence was really Prince Heinrich of Sublinia, and their plucky underdog story has captured the imagination of William's readers. But Blythe insists on carrying on to the keep. Corporal Maledict suffers from caffeine withdrawal and Vietnam flashbacks, and Wazir enters her Joan of Arc era. At the keep, the Borgogravians are outside and the Alliance are inside. There's nothing for it but to nick some clothes from a whorehouse and sneak in as washerwoman. Jackram is the only one not to go, and Blythe is the only one not to get caught.
Was her? Does I guess was her bothered you the first time?
Um, Probably less so than the others because I felt at least she had like a clearly defined role with the whole Joan of Arc thing, whereas I felt, the other three human females, I find them a little bit harder to keep track of, like who was who and what their deal was and stuff. Um, as a character, I think Wazir is unsettling, but is kind of purposefully so, And definitely the social context of why she is the way she is unsettling and it's uncomfortable. And again, purposefully so. So,
Of the many contrivances in the book, that Wazer's the one that bothers me the most. I don't get the paranormal attachments into that. It's essentially, it feels like a UK messenger again, which we had in Small Gods, where we had and time slash the Duchess comes down, makes things right in a very different way.
yeah, I think, that's fair. I mean, it's literally a Deus Ex Machina again. Uh, I think this, yeah, the source of it, like the way that it doesn't fully fix everything as well. Like the Duchess replaces Nuggin, and that's unquestionably good, but it doesn't fix their society whole cloth. And we'll sort of talk about that maybe a bit more at the end. But I do think the ending of this book's actually really interesting, much more interesting certainly than I first gave it credit for. Uh, but yeah, I can sort of get you go, well, okay, well they're in it, they end up in a crypt and there's zombies, and then the Duchess gets them out of it. Like, and you go, yeah, okay, that feels a little bit.
Yeah, the zombies again serve no actual purpose in the story, but to make a point which I've forgotten. But definitely a point there because
Yeah, there's some thematic stuff going on, but yeah, you don't really feel like they're in any significant jeopardy in that scene. I don't think. Um,
one of the can I bring up one of the more interesting points in this for me? The plan by Blouse to go into the keep disguised as women, and Polly is constantly trying to put herself forward. And the message that men think they can do women's jobs better than women, the the whole push and pull of that long scene was kind of hysterical, heartbreaking. Works on so many layers.
it does. The whole sequence is great. And if it, in retrospect, especially on the second read, a lot of the book, especially like the thematic working, is building up to that, and all those things that you just mentioned. But then the fact that the extra kind of little layer to that tickled me more this time around. Certainly, I don't think I noticed at all the first time around. It was like the male characters. So like when they get caught, so like Blouse doesn't get caught, but Polly and the squad do, because men's perception of women is based on what they think women are, not what women actually are. Um, and that, yeah, that's something that went like 3 miles over my head the first time I read it, and I was like, oh yeah, okay, that's saying something quite interesting here, and also like super funny as well. Like it's one of the better set pieces for sure when they get caught sneaking into the castle, and then the punchline at the end of the scene is the woman who comes to take them away at the end is actually Blouse. It's great. That whole bit's great. And if everything else is just building up to that, it's worth it. Yeah.
I'm just now getting Blouse getting something famous named after him. Doesn't actually happen in the book, but over and around the world, there's a different science going on.
Yeah, it's a constant kind of what would be the word? I was going to say a cock tease, and that's probably right. I suppose because his name's Blouse, and there's this running joke that if you do really, really well, you get an item of clothing, or what's the alternative? An item
Food
of clothing
stuff.
or a piece of food named after you. So like the whole way through, you're like, oh yeah, he's going to get a blouse. It's going to be named after him, and then it ends up being something else. It ends up being food. Uh, it's quite silly, but it's silly in all the right ways. It's very Pratchett. Yeah, I enjoyed that a lot.
The scene with the village that they go into, the encampment, everybody seems to know Jack Room. And I go straight to the brothel scenes, which I guess is the biggest tell, actually, in retrospect, in hindsight, that Jack Room is female.
Yeah, potentially. Yeah, well, not potentially. Definitely. Yeah, I think that's right. That's bang on. Yeah.
Haven't a lot too much to say about that, and that's kind of the problem, I guess, when doing this as a. I mean, it's the only way I think we can do book reviews is in this general kind of way, other than sort of going through like one page or 10 pages at a time, and that way the podcast would go on for years, and we'd probably
But
both be zombies by the time it's finished.
we're having so much fun. Yeah, and I can appreciate that. I know some of the other podcasts sort of break the books into parts, and I do feel like this book being so long and also quite thematically dense, I suppose. It probably does feel like we're doing a bit of a disservice. Certainly, whenever I was trying to write the synopsis, like I left a lot out, even just in terms of what happens. And I do think that, like, as as well kind of regarded as this book is in the fandom, like it is by far the densest Discworld
Yeah.
book. Like I would say, and that's what made me bounce off it the first time around for sure.
Tell me, a tangent, but one I think well worth taking. Did you read the annotations for this?
I have skimmed them, yeah. Again, like all the real world references, and this has got to be like it's not just dense in terms of story and character and themes. It's dense in terms of references as
I'm going
well.
to go and look them up, but it strikes me on many levels this book would be perfect for an academic study.
Yeah, that
It
absolutely would.
probably has.
I'm
And
sure it
actually, I've
has. Yeah.
asked this before, and I've forgot to look up on it. If any of our listeners, viewers, know of any good Discworld academia, please forward links to us, recommendations for the best stuff. Yeah, I'd really like to get my hands on those, and PJ would too.
For sure, for sure. Yeah, not that I have enough academic reading to be doing or anything.
Loads of time, man.
Of course, yeah, but it's nothing like procrastinating by dipping into a new field. Yeah, but like all the folk songs, I think almost all the folk songs that are referenced are real folk songs. Um, the Polly Oliver one is real for sure. There's loads and loads of specific references to the Napoleonic Wars, to the First World War, the obviously the title, the first blast of the trumpet against the Monstrous Regiment of Women. It's a pamphlet by 16th century pamphlet by John Knox given out about Queens. Um, yeah, so it's just it's crazy, crazy, crazy dance. I'm scrolling through the. I mean, some of this stuff I knew, most vast majority of it I didn't. Um, yeah, there's all sorts going on here, but the songs in particular, like I can't believe there's so many references to so many specific, really, to my eye, very obscure British and Irish folk songs in here, and a significant character stuff and plot stuff is kind of based around them. So yeah, this is like I can't even imagine the research that goes into this book, or like how much of this stuff does he just know, how much of it does he go out and actively seek. Like the process behind this just completely boggles my mind.
And that conjured up another idea that runs through this book, that of family, of community that you get. Well, I guess many people in the military speak of how a military family, the people they serve with, fulfilling that need. And it's something we very much get through our squad, through Polly, through Jackrum's little lads. This not some camaraderie, but looking after one another, which is very, very warm, very strong in this book. Now that I think about it,
Yeah, for sure. And obviously that's a recurring motif in a lot of military fiction. I think the fact that they're all women and they all share a secret, there's definitely actual layers to it. In this, it sort of makes it feel slightly less archetypal, maybe, in a good way.
Yeah, links in with feminism there.
Indeed, yeah. It's our two middle-aged white men are most qualified to discuss issues of feminism here, but
Obligatory Garth Ennis plug the Night Witches
oh yeah,
Battlefield series.
it's very, very good.
Acting Corporal Polly learns to anticipate Bloise's orders all the way from the washroom to the cells via the crypt, where they free the imprisoned Borogravians and the battle for the keep begins. The squad admit to being women, and an impromptu hearing is held during the battle. Strappy resurfaces to cast aspersions, but Jackram reveals that she knows where the socks are stuffed, as it were. Most of the high command are women too. Deals are done, women can stay in the army, and Borogravia can stay unconquered, provided they leave the clacks alone. Nuggin is out, and Wazzer, as the Duchess, is in. Jackram finally retires as Polly, Paul, and Shufty go home to the inn. But when it looks like things are going to kick off again, Polly decides to shake things up properly.
So I haven't said it yet. I got all the way to the fourth section without me saying a lot happens there, but a lot does happen there. It's the first Discworld book where not really a lot happens up until the final act, maybe you could say. Uh, but yeah, the whole battle for the keep and the whole I mean, I think that part of what maybe stretched my suspension of disbelief the first time around was that they kind of had try to have this hearing, this like court martial that isn't a court martial while the battle is still going on. Feels a bit okay.
I love
yeah.
the contradiction, the nonsense of it is perfect.
Yeah, yeah. Now having spent some time around public bureaucracies in the intervening 30 years or whatever, I'm like, oh yeah, I get it now. And then yeah, the fact that the big reveal, the big twist reveal that like, oh no, they're all women. At the time, I just didn't get it. I freely admit I didn't get it. I was wrong. Didn't land with me. This time I go, yep, I can see the setup for it coming from page one almost now. Go, yes, this is well set up. It is, thematically on point. It more or less, it's telegraphed actually really clearly. I just didn't get it the first time around.
Before we get into that, we get our requisite amount of thriller, conflict, drama. We get the little war. We get the trying to take the keep. We get escaping the prison, and all that's kind of it's fun. It's I think it is when we come down to the hearing that is the really interesting point of the finale. It's the proper sort of climax.
Yeah, the fact that the squad kind of get once they get in and they release the men and they sort of get sidelined, that's obviously very thematically on point, and then they get dragged up. Oh, pardon me. Then they get dragged up in front of the generals to go, yeah, very, very much undercutting the kind of traditional archetypes, plot points at every stage here. So, yeah, really, there's no reason to be surprised by that. There's no reason to feel shortchanged by it. It actually, within the context of this story, is kind of exactly where the plot should lead.
And it comes from this sort of inconvenient truth of their heroes. They saved Borograve. They're known as heroes. They've made a number of decisive strategical moves in the war, and yet they're being hung out to dry because they're women. And because they're women is the narrative through line that gets them. What's the phrase they use today? Is a good day to ask for things.
Oh, sure.
I'll give you whatever you want.
Yeah, but what I find really interesting, and again, I think this confused the hell out of me probably the first time I read it. But what I found really interesting was that even though they basically get everything that they want, like the best possible outcome for them, like they get women are allowed to join the army. They don't have to pretend to be men anymore. But like even with that, they're still not treated equally. There's this whole thing that yes, they get these uniforms, but the uniforms are kind of girly and they're not really given any proper jobs and stuff like that. So it initially feels like it's going to be quite a down ending. And I suppose we've skipped over loads of stuff here. I've just skipped right to the
There's,
end.
I mean, there's a lot of struggle to get to that point. Remember, we get Rust comes to Polly with a fantastic offer, and she and the rest of the squad turn it down.
Yeah.
The assembled generals do the same. Again, it's turned down, and they stand and they fight in the court of law. When we get Jackram enters the picture and starts to use his assets that have been built up over the years, his contacts, and it exposes these generals as women, the sort of women who have advanced under the deals that they've taken. Much smaller they are. They have pulled the ladder up behind,
Yeah.
are keen on keeping the lie in place, and that does say a lot. And feminism has constantly been battled by people like that. Any kind of equality has always been blockaded. Has histories of people who've pulled the ladder up behind them.
Yeah. I wonder how kind of, because I don't think it's really addressed. Like, I don't think any of the women, any of the generals, any of the like top brass women know about any of the others. And I think there's something in that, the lack of kind of, because none of them know and they're all suspicious of it. They're all really scared of being found out. Like they're not able to create the kind of solidarity that you need to affect that kind of social change. Um, Maybe that's something. Maybe it isn't. But I think like yeah, the fact that all these offers get made and the girls stand their ground and they basically they take it right to the wire and they get the best possible outcome that they can get. It's still not really that good. It's still like you're still women. You're still not going to be treated the same as men in the army or indeed realistically in society. I think that's an extremely realist ending for a fantasy book about women pretending to be men in a fantasy army with trolls and vampires and whatnot. But then I think the very very ending where, and again, this is where the whole, I guess, where the connection to the larger Discworld series, where she uses the information that Jackram gives her about, she decides, well, we could expose this, the kind of the power of information, the power of journalism, of good journalism, if such a thing still exists, to affect change in that sphere. That, and the fact that it's left open ended, we don't really know if that actually works or not. That feels quite grounded again and quite real. The more I think about it, it's like I can't believe I didn't like this ending the first time I read it. Like this time, I'm like, this is feels like it's breaking really new ground for this series. A really, really good ending, I think. And I don't know, I just didn't get it. I just completely didn't get it the first time I read it. I'm kicking myself now.
I'm not sure I fully appreciate it. My ending is among my favorite parts in the book, which is the ending that we get. Well, the endings that we get between Polly and Jackram, where they're in the keep and they're just sitting down. Jackram's having a meal. Polly walks in, and Polly calls Jackram's gender, and they have a long discussion. I'm struggling to remember much about it, but I really liked it, and they.
I think it's where the whole family, the whole
the
like
confessions about Jackram's family and Polly encouraging to go visit them, and then later we get the the cutlasses arrive in the inn with a photograph of Jackram and his family.
Yeah, it's
And
awesome.
it's so heartwarming.
Yeah, like Jackram gets probably the most idealistic ending of them all, and there's a sense that they earned it, I guess, over the course of not just this book, but like everything that transpired in this world before then as well. Um, and yeah, and Wazir kind of becoming the Duchess, and that's not held up as like, oh, everything's going to become hunky dory. It's all going to be sunshine and ice cream overnight. You know, it's held up as kind of a step in the right direction, but not really much more than that. And everything we know kind of about Wazir and the Duchess and that version of the Duchess that she believes in, like it's not necessarily the sort of person you think is gonna be like, yes, it's better than Nuggin, but like that's still a person with some serious demons. He's got, you know, definitely not an idealistic, you know, yeah, not an idealized kind of new queen or whatever coming in, or duchess, I guess. Uh, so yeah, it all feels. I know you were saying about small gods, and that even feels more grounded than small gods, even though small gods certainly quite a well-rounded story as well. But this feels like a little bit more real, a little bit more gritty, just that little bit more kind of mature, as we've been saying the whole way through. That's kind of the theme.
We often flag up how many endings there are in Discworld novels, and there's probably more endings here than most, but they feel
Yeah,
more organic than yeah, really are feels natural. Sort of an honourable mention to Vimes and Polly,
it's
which
a
is
fun scene.
again another really interesting touch. It occurred to me in this book, we don't see much of Vimes, but he is he's very like the patrician in a lot of ways.
Yeah, you can see that. Yeah, that he's becoming a much more political animal. But at least I think like we've been on that journey with him. I know like Night Watch was a bit of a departure from it because of the timey wimey stuff, but like everything else, you know, he has been on that trajectory probably since the end of Guards Guards, really. Since all his various promotions have taken him where he is. So yeah, it's interesting to see Vimes, but he's doing the kind of political maneuvering, the kind of real politic that the patrician would do, but he still kind of wants to play up the fact that he used to be a sergeant and he understands the troops and all that kind of stuff too. So I do think he brings his own sort of special vimesiness to it. But that's probably why the patrician sent him. The patrician knows that he has that capability. Yeah, that I mean, a couple of things structurally. This is probably the furthest I've ever got into one of these podcasts without talking about story structure. Basics. I spent all week really banging my head against it uh, in other various guises, but this I don't think this like it's not a very traditionally structured story, and I think that's fine for the most part. The two things that do annoy me a little bit, I can't let it go, is how inconsistently Vimes is deployed as a point of view character. Like I think it would be fine for him to be in it as inconsistently as he is if we didn't get scenes from his point of view. And then the final thing is introducing new characters late in the third act. So the character whose name I've completely forgotten for that reason is their lawyer, the kind of the lawyer soldier guy slash girl who ends up defending them. Like that is too late in my mind to introduce a new character. That person should have been set up earlier on and then came back at the end.
Yeah, there's no real reason how that character I feel could have been fitted. I suppose they could have fitted in with Vimes.
Potentially,
I
yeah.
do recall the
Something alongside of it
first
more.
appearance of Vimes in this book as being a bit, yeah, it was from his perspective rather than about him.
Yeah. And there's a few, and again, and they're a bit sporadic. But yeah, those are two fairly minor complaints. In a book that's juggling a lot of very heavy themes, a lot of characters, a lot of real world references. it's unfair of me to criticize it to that degree, but nevertheless.
There were perks.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm super, super glad. Like, one of the reasons I wanted to do this kind of project in general was to revisit the kind of handful of Discworld books that I was fairly sure I just didn't get or didn't get to the fullest extent the first time around. Monstrous Regiment was very much on my mind because I know that it has definitely connected with a lot of other people in a way that it didn't connect with me first time around. And I can say fairly assuredly that, like, I get it now. So what, and is that, I mean, I feel like you sort of hedged your bets a little bit with your first impressions. I know you had positive things to say, but like, is it unfair to put you on the spot and say even a ballpark ranking? Would this be top 10? Would it be top 50%? Like, what do you think?
I get the feeling, like I've said with so many other Discord books, that this is one that'll stay with me. That
Mm-hmm.
my estimation of it will change over time. Small Gods, I was kind of, "Hmm, all right, I guess." But 5 books in, 6 books in, I'm still thinking about it, and I'm thinking, wow, it's brilliant. So I think this is going to be good. But I mean, first impressions, very happy with this book. Yeah.
Any favorite moments? Any favorite quotes?
Only favorite moments I haven't mentioned that comes to mind is Maledict sucking a bag of roast coffee.
Yeah, yeah. So some of the Vietnam stuff. I mean, I remember it's like really, really early days. It might be like Color of Magic or Light Fantastic, where it's the first time Discworld kind of there's a brief crossover into the round world. I think this Rincewind find himself on like a passenger plane briefly in like one of the way early books, and I remember being like, I don't like that. I don't like it when they cross over, but I kind of like this one, you know. And I'm a big fan of all those kind of movies that are being referenced and stuff like that. I did definitely bookmark a few quotes.
Are you thinking of Rincewind on Space Shuttle?
No, I mean this is literally a few lines. I think in one of the very very first books. If somebody wants to write in and correct me, please do. Um, yeah, so I did this weird thing. I've been doing it a lot actually, where if I have a hard copy of the book, I kind of jump between the hard copy and the ebook. Ebook's better for doing annotations, so I probably did miss some, but there is some great lines in this book.
I have my quotes handy.
One of the first ones, or the first bookmark I have anyway, is Polly's description of Polly's description of Blouse's horse, which is that it looked like a self-propelled toast rack with a bad attitude. just like, just it's just. I mean, it's so sad because obviously it's a skinny horse who's pissed off about being alive, which is not a nice mental image, but just the vocabulary used is spectacular.
We like DCL Space Wiki. Unfortunately, there's no quotes in this book. We've got a power to effect change. Oh, don't we know somebody that is involved with that? Yes, we do. I will
I'm sure we
reply to
do.
them.
Call them out.
Chris Jones writing has a lot of quotes. I kind of, this is a book I felt I should have been making a note of the quotes as I went, because as good as Chris's selections are, I'm sure he's missed out a bunch. But here's one from that. "A famous last stand, sir," said Jackram. He spat expertly into the fire in the tumble-down hearth. "To hell with them, sir. That's just a way of dying famous."
Yeah, that's good. And it does have there are those little moments of like, yeah, even though it's quite a grounded book about war, you still have to have those little moments of badassery. Uh, I don't know. I've not a lot of my other quotes are jumping out at me as I'm like, why did I highlight this? I possibly just did it by accident as I was falling asleep. Uh, yeah, I mean, I guess we're always usually, I think, on the same page with Terry in terms of his criticisms of organized religion. So I don't want to beat a dead horse with those necessarily, but I did like too many hands clasped that could more gainfully answer your prayers by effort and resolve, which is basically stop praying and get off your ass and sort it out yourself. Only expressed a lot more eloquently.
Revenge is not redress. Revenge is a wheel and it turns backwards. The
Oh
day
yeah,
of your masters.
that's good. That's really good.
Top
Yeah,
tier stuff.
indeed.
And one more honorable mention,
Go
men
for it.
take over. It is probably because of socks.
Yeah, the whole the socks metaphor the whole way through. Yeah, you can't do your laundry now without thinking about, the other meaning of the word socks now, and where one might be putting them. Yeah, I mean, it's such a self-aware assessment of male power in society, like to be written by a man. And I mean, this is easy for me to say as a man reading it. But again, the sort of cursory glance through the subreddit. I mean, obviously, for many reasons, this is a book that seems to have chimed particularly strongly with the female audience and the um, LGBTQ plus audience as well. Um, so, yeah, just like I guess it always comes back. There's no better, and I will say this at some stage in every episode. There's absolutely no better observer of human nature and the human condition than Terry Pratchett. There just isn't.
Word. Let's do some thanks.
Yeah, let's do it.
Pratchett podcast. Everybody reposts their stuff on Facebook, Blue Sky, shares it anywhere, tells people about it. Please go out and talk to folk about it. We really appreciate when you do it. Listen to it
Indeed.
in public, listen to it in the buses until somebody tells you off, which they should.
They should.
I'm going to say thank you to my patrons. Patreon.com/Andy Luke gives me money for coffee. And you get advance access to loads of stuff like this podcast. So thank you to Sonia, Andree, Richard Huang, Andrew Bolster, Donal, Fallon, Alex C., Amanda Rodriguez, Shell, Dave Cromie, Matt Saunders, Alan Rowell, Benjamin Stone, Arsalan, Haider, and particularly Ian Lawther, who also go halvers on a Zoom bill, which allows us to do this.
Big thanks. I like that you rolled your R's on Rodriguez there. That was very authentic. I enjoyed that. Yeah, I don't have much to plug at the minute, if anything. Do I? Nope, don't think so.
The Devil's Own is still in the cybersphere.
It is. Yeah.
Haven't already. Now's your time.
Yeah, the BBC must be getting sick of that by now. They must be ready to take it down. Although I did have the opportunity. Anytime anybody mentions ghost stories or devil worshippers on the Northern Ireland subreddit, I make sure that I bring it up and send a link. So I think we are still having a slow trickle of lessons on BBC Sounds, but if you haven't had a chance to check it out yet, I can't imagine they're going to leave it up there for much longer. I don't know. I mean, maybe they will. What do I know?
I was just nipping across the room to get a copy of Coastlines After Dark because there's still copies available. They're not sold out yet. But there's only 2 copies here, so one of them could go. So just go and buy one off the internet now, quickly. Coastlines After Dark.
Do it now.
Also, my YouTube schedule has been absolutely freaking hectic lately.
He's working hard.
I'm doing the Sunday Comics, which is me reviewing British indie small press stuff. I've recently read the best graphic novel ever by Scarlett and Sophie Rickert. Oh, this is Mouse Watchman Dark Knight level. This is Joe Sacco Palestine level. The Rickert sisters adaptation of Robert Tressel's The Ragged Trousered Philanthropist, which is the ultimate socialist novel. So you can go and watch. I do a review most Sundays at midday. I'm also doing Screen Cleaner, which is my magazine show, very much in the vein of Charlie Brooker's Wife series. I've done a piece on interviewing a lot of YouTube streamers, a piece in Northern Ireland last week. By the time you watch this, there'll be a piece on Scotland. And we're just doing, I'm just doing 6 episodes building towards the big council elections here in the UK, most of the UK anyway, on May 6th. So check that out. It's my passion project. I put kind of everything into it. If this episode is late, that's why.
This episode is definitely late. Yeah, I feel bad. I did intend to try to get on board with the Northern Ireland episode. Unfortunately, the Easter holidays in our house turned into a bit of a clusterfuck. I'm gonna say it. We're gonna drop the F bomb. I think possibly for the first time.
You only get one per episode.
Yes, exactly. Keep it PG-13. Cool. Yeah, but
YouTube.com/@AndrewLuke, which is over there now. Yeah.
good job. It's the place to be. All right. What's next on the Discworld agenda? I always ask this without consulting the list, and then we have to scramble.
I would like to take it a bit easy because I'm working.
It's like I don't want to read any more Discworld.
Let's do Soul Music, the animation. I have some Meatloaf to listen to.
Oh, that does sound fun. Hold on. There may be. I don't. I've got Skid Row though. That's close. That feels like it's in the right. Meatloaf must be downstairs. Anyway, yeah, let's do that. That'll be fun. Do tune in for that.
We will see you next time down Cosgrove Hall.
Goodbye.